Hello. In this session, we're going to talk a little bit about trend historian and web control. And when we say trend historian, we simply mean a mechanism by which we save historical trend data to the hard drive. And we do this because our hard drive capacity is far higher than the memory in a particular controller. So for example, we're looking at the discharge air temperature here, and we said that we're going to save 288 samples for this particular point. Well, when we exceed 288 samples, that controller is simply going to discard the oldest sample and override it with the newest sample. Well, if we want to keep those older samples, that trend data, we have to store them on the hard drive, and we do that by enabling trend historian. I'm going to go ahead and do so, and we're going to see some settings we have to configure. The first one is, how often do we want to store trend samples on the hard drive? Well, we're going to say every 129 trend samples, write to historian, save this data in the database. This number obviously needs to be less than the allocated memory, otherwise we lose samples. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. We can push a button that says, store all our trends now at this point immediately. Don't wait for 129 trend samples to accrue. And something else that happens that a lot of people don't know but should know is that when we download memory to a controller, if we have trend historian enabled, the first thing that web control will do is store that data that's in the module on the hard drive so that none of it gets lost during the memory download. It's a very nice feature of web control. It makes trend historian very solid. We also know how many trend samples have accumulated since the last notification. And we also know when was the last time that web control actually wrote data to historian. In this case, it says 0 because we haven't yet. We've just enabled it. But if I check this tomorrow, for example, it would have a time date stamp indicating, hey, I did in fact store data per your request at this particular time. So it kind of verifies that your trend historian functionality is working. Now the last thing we need to do is we need to specify how long do we want that trend data to exist in the database on the hard drive. And we don't want the hard drive space being completely consumed by trend data, so we can say, how long do we want the discharge temp historical data to reside on our hard drive? I could change that to 30, and what that would tell web control is, don't have any data older than 30 for the discharge temp on the hard drive. If I change it in this field, it's on a per point basis. So every single point in the system that I'm historically gathering trends for can be different. However, I also have a master setting, and if I keep it at 0, the points will use this master setting. And this master setting is set on the system settings page. Now I could navigate there by going to config, system settings, etc., or I could use this hyperlink. When I choose this hyperlink, I can see that I'm going to keep historical trends for 30 days, and that's for every point that has a 0 here. That works for me. I can also specify when I want the expired historical trends to be purged from the database. So what this means is every day at 1:30 in the morning, web control is going to check, and it's going to remove anything older than 30 days. And that's the mechanism by which we keep the historical trend database a manageable size.